$80. That's what a single bag of the fancy synthetic fertilizer at the big box store can run you now, and most of it is washing straight past your roots into the gutter. Picture it. It's a Saturday morning, coffee's warm, you walk out to the garden you've been babying since April, and you're expecting that thick, jungle green wall of tomatoes and squash the old-timers down the road always seem to grow. Instead, you get pale leaves, skinny stems, and a few sad fruits hanging there like they gave up. And you fed it. You did everything the label told you to do. Here's where I want you to meet the quiet villain in this story. It's not you. It's that smiling guy in the orange apron pointing you toward the brightly colored bag with the big number on the front. That number, that 10-10-10 or 20-20-20 stamped across the front, that's not there to help your plants. It's there to help the register. The whole fertilizer aisle is built to sell you fast, salty, water-soluble nitrogen that gives you one quick green flush and then leaves your soil emptier than it found it. And I know how this feels because it comes back every single year. You spend the money, you spread the granules, you water it in. For about 10 days, things look great, and you think you finally cracked it. Then the green fades, the growth stalls, and by July, you're standing there with a hose wondering why the Amish family 3 miles away is hauling wheelbarrows of produce out of dirt that looks blacker and richer than yours will ever be. So let me be blunt. Most people are fertilizing completely wrong. They're dumping high nitrogen synthetic feed on the surface. They're feeding the leaves and starving the soil. And they're doing it on a schedule the bag invented, not one the plant actually wants. And the consequence is the thing that drives you crazy. Nothing ever really changes. Same money, same effort, same disappointing August. Today that ends. I'm going to show you two completely different sides of this. First, the exact fertilizer to drop right now and why the timing matters more than the brand. Second, the specific homemade and low-cost feeds the Amish have leaned on for generations that build dirt instead of renting it. And then, at the very end, I'm going to give you the one approach that is the entire reason this video exists, the thing that makes a garden thick year after year without you buying another bag. I'm not going to name it yet. You'll know it when we get there. But first, let me challenge something you probably believe. You think the number on the bag, the NPK, is the most important thing about fertilizer. What if I told you it's almost the least important thing, and that the dirt underneath it decides whether any of those numbers even matter? Part one is the problem that breaks more gardens than any other, and it's this. You are feeding the plant instead of feeding the soil. And that matters first because everything green you want to grow is downstream of the life beneath your feet. Here's what you instinctively do. You see a struggling plant yellowing a little, slow to take off, and your gut says, give it more nitrogen. So you reach for the blue water-soluble stuff or the high-number granules, and you pour it on. And honestly, it feels great because within a week or two, the leaves go dark green and shoot up, and you feel like a genius. But here's what's actually happening beneath the surface. That fast synthetic nitrogen is mostly salt. Salt index on some of these products runs well over 100, and when you flood your root zone with soluble salts, you pull water out of the soil life and out of the fine root hairs through plain osmosis. You're getting a burst of leafy top growth, sure, but you're doing it by burning out the microbes, the fungi, and the earthworms that actually deliver nutrients to the plant in the first place. Studies on soil from heavily synthetic-fed plots show microbial activity dropping by a third or more compared to soil fed with compost and manure. So you get the green flush, then a crash because you torched the very engine that keeps the plant fed. Here's the reframe. A fertilizer that gives you a fast green up and a fast fade isn't feeding your garden. It's borrowing growth from next month and charging you interest. So let me give you the right way, simplest to most advanced. The simplest fix you can do this week costs almost nothing. Stop top dressing raw synthetic salt and switch to a slow, gentle nitrogen source. Blood meal is the easiest. It's around 12 to 13% nitrogen. It releases over 6 to 8 weeks instead of 6 to 8 days. And you only need about 1 cup spread around a tomato plant and scratched lightly into the top inch of soil. A 4-pound bag runs you about $12 to $15 in feeds a row all season. Step up from there to a balanced organic granular feed, something in the 444 or 555 range made from feather meal, bone meal, and composted poultry manure. Those small numbers scare people off because the bag next to it says 20. But here's the thing. The 444 feeds for 2 to 3 months and feeds the soil life at the same time, while the 20 washes through in 2 weeks. You broadcast about 1.5 pounds per 100 square feet and water it in once. The most advanced move, and the one that separates a good garden from a thick one, is to pair that granular feed with a living source, worm castings. A 1/2-inch ring of worm castings around the base of each plant, about 2 cups, delivers a slow drip of nitrogen plus billions of microbes that unlock the phosphorus and potassium already locked in your soil. That's the move most people never make, and it's the cheapest one if you build your own worm bin. Now, hear what's at stake if you keep doing it the old way. It's not just a slow July. It's the whole season. You spend $40 to $80 a bag 2 or 3 times across the summer, that's well over $100 gone, and you end up with weaker plants, more disease, more aphids, because soft, salt-fed growth is exactly what pests are drawn to. You lose the harvest and you spend the money twice. So here's your universal prevention tip for this part. Before you feed anything, water the soil first. Never drop fertilizer onto bone-dry dirt because dry soil concentrates the salts right against the roots, and that's where most fertilizer burn comes from. Moist soil first, feed second, water again. That one order of operations saves more plants than any product on the shelf. And listen, if this is the kind of thing nobody ever tells you in the garden aisle, do me one quick favor and subscribe. That's genuinely all this channel does week after week, the stuff the label leaves off on purpose. One tap and you're set. And if you want to go even deeper into every one of these methods, the exact ratios, the seasonal schedules, and the soil building systems the Amish have refined over generations, I put together a resource that covers all of it in one place. It's called the Amish Soil Guide, and it's part of a full field edition that includes the Amish Lawn Guide and everything else I've documented from years of studying how these families grow so much from so little. You can find the link in the description below. It's the complete Amish Yard Field Edition, and at $97, it replaces years of trial, error, and wasted bags of synthetic feed. Everything in one place, written the way the old-timers actually do it. But now let's get into the part most people get catastrophically wrong. Part 2 is a completely different problem, because it's not about what you feed, it's about what your soil is made of. And you can do everything in Part 1 perfectly and still fail right here. Here's the thesis. The Amish don't grow thick gardens because of a secret fertilizer. They grow thick gardens because they treat the soil like a savings account, and you've been treating yours like a checking account you keep overdrawing. And here's the universal mistake. People feed the plant for one season and never put organic matter back. They take and never return carbon to the ground, and the catastrophic part is that this one takes months to show up. You won't see it in week 1. You'll see it 2 summers from now when your soil has turned to a pale, dusty, lifeless powder that won't hold water, won't hold nutrients, and bakes into a crust every time the sun hits it. By then you're watering twice a day just to keep things alive, and you still can't figure out why. So let me give you the methods, the way the old gardeners actually layer them, cheapest and simplest first. Method 1 is aged manure, and this is the backbone of every thick Amish garden you've ever envied. Composted cow or horse manure, the kind that's sat and broken down for at least 6 months until it's dark, crumbly, and smells like clean forest floor, not like a barn. The reason it works is mechanical. It's only about 1 to 2% nitrogen, but it's loaded with carbon and humus that feed the microbes and act like a sponge, holding up to its own weight in water. You spread it 2 to 3 inches thick over the bed in fall or early spring and let the worms drag it down for you. A pickup load from a local farm is often free or $20, and it does more for your dirt than $100 of synthetic ever will. Fresh manure will burn your plants, so this is the one rule you don't break. Aged only. Never fresh against living roots. Method 2 is compost paired with what the old-timers call a manure tea, and this is your mid-season booster. Finished compost is the slow part, worked into the top 3 to 4 inches at about 1 cubic foot per 10 square feet of bed. But the T is the fast part. You take a shovelful of aged manure or finished compost, tie it in a burlap sack or an old pillowcase, and steep it in a 5-gallon bucket of water for about 2 to 3 days until it looks like weak coffee. Then you dilute it roughly 1 part tea to 10 parts water and pour it right at the base of your plants every 2 weeks. Here's why it works. You're not just adding nutrients, you're inoculating the soil with live microbes that go to work breaking down the organic matter already in the ground and feeding it straight to the roots in a form they can drink immediately. It's the bridge between the slow feed and the fast feed, and it costs you nothing but a bucket in a couple of days. Method 3 is the one a serious grower reaches for when they want to fix the soil structure for years, not weeks, and that's a combination of bone meal, wood ash, and a fall cover crop. Bone meal brings phosphorus around 15%, and it's what drives strong root systems and heavy flowering and fruiting. So you work about a half cup into the planting hole under tomatoes, peppers, and squash. Wood ash, if you burn wood, is free potassium and lime, about 5% potassium, and a single coffee can spread over 100 square feet, sweetens acidic soil, and stiffens up cell walls so your plants resist disease. But the real professional move is the cover crop. After your last harvest, instead of leaving bare dirt to erode all winter, you broadcast crimson clover or winter rye, about 2 ounces of seed per 100 square feet, and let it grow. The clover pulls nitrogen out of the air and fixes it into the soil through its roots, as much as 70 to 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre, and in spring you chop it down and turn it under as a free green manure. That is how the Amish feed a garden without a single bag from the store. They grow their fertilizer right where it's going to be used. See how the value climbs there? Method 1 feeds the soil. Method 2 feeds it faster. Method 3 rebuilds it permanently and makes next year's fertilizer for free. Layer all 3 and you'll watch your dirt go from pale and dusty to that dark, crumbly chocolate cake texture that holds a footprint and smells alive. Part 3, prevention. And this is it, the thing I sealed up at the start, the entire reason I made this video. It's mulch. Specifically, a thick, living mulch layer maintained year-round. I know, you were waiting for some exotic product, and instead the secret weapon is the thing most people rake up and throw away. But hear me out, because this single habit prevents both problems at once. It stops the soil from drying into lifeless crust, and it stops the nutrients you just added from washing away. Here's why it works mechanically. A 3 to 4 inch blanket of organic mulch keeps the soil temperature stable and the moisture locked in, so the microbes and worms stay active in the top few inches where 90% of your feeder roots live, instead of dying off every time the sun bakes the surface. And as that mulch slowly breaks down from the bottom, it feeds the soil a steady trickle of carbon and nitrogen all season long, basically composting in place. The material is simple. Use straw, shredded leaves, grass clippings, or aged wood chips, whatever you can get cheap or free. You apply it by laying it 3 to 4 inches thick across the whole bed, keeping it pulled back about an inch from the stems so they don't rot, and you top it up once in midsummer as it settles. That's the whole job, and here's what it saves you. A properly mulched garden cuts your watering by roughly 50%, which on a typical suburban plot through a hot summer is real money on the water bill, and it eliminates most of your weeding, which is hours of your weekend back. Add up the water, the fertilizer you no longer wash away, and the bags you stop buying, and a committed gardener easily saves $150 to $200 every single year, while the garden gets thicker instead of thinner. So which one is for you? If you're short on time and just want a fast, reliable feed this weekend, go with the blood meal and a balanced 4-4-4 organic, granular, and mulch over it. That's the busy homeowner's path. If you've got a real plot and you're tired of buying bags, build your soil with aged manure and a manure tea through the season, and you'll cut your costs in half by next year. And if you're in this for the long game and you want that deep, black, Amish-style dirt that grows a jungle with almost no inputs, run the cover crop and the mulch every single year, and within 2 seasons, you won't recognize your own garden. Now, here's the new problem you're going to run straight into once you start doing all this right. The better your soil gets, the more it holds water, and if you overdo the mulch or the manure on heavy clay, you can tip into the opposite problem, soggy roots and root rot. where your plants suddenly wilt even though the ground is wet. It's the number one thing that catches people the season after they finally fix their dirt. If that's the situation you're worried about, or if you're already seeing it, type the word soggy down in the comments, just that one word, and tell me your soil type if you know it. I read them, and the next video is going to show you exactly how to build drainage into a rich bed so you get all the richness without the rot. Subscribe so it lands in your feed the day it goes up, because if you fixed your soil and then drowned it, that would be a real shame after all this work. Drop the word soggy, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. But before you go, let me give you a few things that will make every method in this video work harder, because the difference between a decent garden and a thick one usually comes down to small details nobody bothers to mention. First, timing your feed to the moon and the weather is something the old-timers swear by, and there's real logic underneath it. You want to feed and water in the early morning before the sun gets high, because that's when your plants are pulling moisture up fastest through their roots, and the nutrients ride along with that flow. Feed at noon in 90-degree heat, and most of it evaporates off the surface before it ever reaches a root hair. So drop your fertilizer between 6 and 9 in the morning, water it gently, and you'll get noticeably more out of every bag. Second, watch the color of your leaves, because your plants are talking to you, and most people never listen. Yellowing on the bottom, older leaves usually means nitrogen, and that's your cue for the blood meal or the manure tea. Purple or reddish tints on the undersides of leaves means phosphorus, and that's when you scratch in a little bone meal. Brown, crispy edges on the leaf margins point to potassium, and that's where your wood ash earns its keep. Learn those three signals and you'll stop guessing and start feeding exactly what the plant is asking for, exactly when it asks. Third, and this is the one that ties everything together, never till that beautiful soil once you've built it. I want to be very clear here, because this is where so many people undo years of good work in a single afternoon. Every time you run a tiller through rich, living soil, you slice apart the fungal networks and the worm channels that took seasons to form, and you flip dormant weed seeds up to the surface where they sprout. The Amish method that actually keeps a garden thick is to disturb the soil as little as possible. You lay your manure on top, you lay your mulch on top, and you let the worms do the tilling for you, pulling all that goodness down through their tunnels day and night for free. No dig isn't lazy. It's the smartest thing you can do for soil that already works. Put all of this together, and here's the truth of it. A thick garden isn't bought. It's built one layer at a time by a person who decided to feed the dirt instead of renting growth from a bag. Do that, and next summer you'll be the one with the wheelbarrow overflowing, and the neighbor down the road will be the one standing there with a hose wondering how on earth you did it. Now go water your soil, lay your mulch, and let the ground do the rest. I'm not done with you yet. If this made sense, you'll want the deeper part. Inside the Amish Garden Circle, I walk you through the whole soil first feeding system, season by season, right where I stopped. Ask me your own question, and I answer you myself. A real person, not a machine. Gardeners like you are already in there with us. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen, cancel anytime, one click. Now that your garden's feeding right, let's keep those weeds from stealing all that goodness. I'll show you a simple Amish trick. Just $3 that clears weeds naturally, no harsh chemicals. It's starting right here.